that they are able to call whenever they need help. He didn't even want to pay for his own, I believe it was his daughter's wedding.
Deal over a 19-year-old white woman that came out to sue him, alleging that he.
The entertainment industry can be a glittering world of red carpets, flashing cameras, and applause. But behind the scenes, it's also a ruthless battlefield where every move can make or break a career. And according to Katt Williams, two major figures in the spotlight, Tyler Perry and Shannon Sharpe, aren't just victims of Hollywood politics, they've been the architects of their own downfall. In a fiery new commentary that has fans buzzing, Katt didn't hold back when addressing what he sees as a dangerous pattern. Celebrities making decisions that not only alienate their audiences but also undermine the very foundation of their success. Katt pointed out that when you rise to a certain level of fame, your moves are magnified, and one wrong step can undo years of hard work. And in his eyes, both Perry and Sharpe have taken several wrong steps in a row. For Tyler Perry, Katt's criticism went beyond just the creative choices in his movies or television shows. He hinted that Perry's relentless focus on building his empire may have led him to forget the very community that once lifted him up. Katt emphasized that when you begin catering more to corporate interests than to the people who genuinely supported you from the beginning, you risk losing authenticity, and once that trust is broken, it's nearly impossible to regain. But Perry wasn't the only one in the line of fire. Katt also turned his sights on Shannon Sharpe, a man whose charisma and outspokenness have made him a star in sports media. According to Katt, Sharpe's willingness to wade into sensational topics and court controversy for clicks has started to overshadow his credibility. In an industry where perception is everything, chasing short-term attention can lead to long-term damage, and Katt believes Sharpe is playing a dangerous game. What makes Katt's remarks sting even more is that he's not speaking as an outsider throwing stones. He's been in the trenches himself. He's seen careers crumble, friendships dissolve, and reputations evaporate overnight. And his warning wasn't just for Perry and Sharpe, it was for anyone in the public eye who thinks they can outsmart the system without consequence. The most shocking part? Katt implied that both Perry and Sharpe had been given opportunities to course-correct, to step back and re-evaluate their paths, but instead of making changes, they doubled down. In Katt's view, this isn't just bad luck or media bias. It's self-inflicted damage that could have been avoided with humility and foresight. The real question now is, are these two willing to listen before it's too late, or are we watching the slow-motion unraveling of two once untouchable careers? Katt Williams didn't just speak in vague generalities. He painted a vivid picture of the choices and behaviors that, in his opinion, have set Tyler Perry and Shannon Sharpe on a collision course with public backlash. When it came to Tyler Perry, Katt revisited the ongoing conversation about Perry's creative process and how his decision to maintain full control over his productions has created both admiration and criticism. While it's true that Perry's self-sufficiency has allowed him to tell the stories he wants without Hollywood gatekeepers interfering, Katt argued that this same control has bred complacency. According to Katt, Perry's refusal to open the door to new voices, writers, and perspectives has caused his work to feel stale, relying on the same formulas, tropes, and caricatures that once brought him success but now risk alienating an audience craving something fresh. But Katt's concerns ran deeper than just creative fatigue. He pointed out that Perry's public image has become entangled with his business deals, particularly those involving massive corporations and platforms. In Katt's view, every time Perry aligns himself with major corporate interests at the expense of bold, challenging storytelling, he chips away at his cultural credibility. Fans, Katt insisted, can feel when an artist is prioritizing profit over passion, and that feeling is toxic to long-term loyalty. Then came Shannon Sharpe. For Katt, Sharpe represents a different kind of problem, a media personality who has the charisma, knowledge, and experience to inspire respect, but who has allowed himself to be drawn into an endless cycle of hot takes and viral soundbites. Katt pointed to Sharpe's recent string of controversial interviews and confrontational exchanges, suggesting that these were less about thoughtful conversation and more about chasing social media buzz. And while that approach might spike views in the short term, it risks leaving behind a trail of fractured relationships and damaged credibility. One example Katt alluded to was Sharpe's willingness to dive into celebrity gossip, a lane that many sports analysts try to avoid in order to protect their professional standing. According to Katt, when you start blurring the lines between sports commentary and tabloid drama, you dilute your brand, and the audience starts to wonder whether you're there to inform or just to stir the pot. What makes Katt's critique hit harder is the underlying theme he kept returning to, the danger of losing touch with your original purpose. Whether you're a filmmaker who once thrived on telling raw, personal stories, or a former athlete who made a career out of discipline and focus, the moment you begin chasing trends instead of staying grounded in your strengths, you invite instability into your career. And instability, in Hollywood and media, can be fatal. Katt's message was clear. Tyler Perry and Shannon Sharpe are both immensely talented, but talent alone isn't enough if you're undermining yourself from the inside. The clock is ticking, and if they don't change course soon, the industry will find new favorites to replace them. Katt didn't shy away from touching the nerves that most in Hollywood tiptoe around. Those whispered conversations that never make it into mainstream interviews but circulate in the industry's private backchannels. He hinted at late-night calls, tense closed-door meetings, and executives expressing quiet frustration over both Perry and Sharpe's recent moves. With Tyler Perry, the whispers centered on an increasing arrogance, an unwillingness to take criticism or adapt to shifting audience tastes. According to Katt, insiders have noticed how Perry has doubled down on old formulas, not because they're working, but because they're safe, producing predictable box office numbers while slowly eroding his cultural relevance. The more he insulates himself in a bubble of yes men and unquestioning supporters, the more out of touch he risks becoming with the very communities that once championed him. As for Shannon Sharpe, Katt alluded to deals and media opportunities quietly slipping away due to his unpredictable outbursts and a growing perception that he thrives more on provocation than substance. Katt claimed that while networks love viral moments, they hate unpredictability, and Sharpe's willingness to make personal jabs or air dirty laundry about fellow celebrities has put certain executives on edge. According to Katt, this is the kind of behind-the-scenes tension that doesn't explode overnight but builds slowly, until one day the phone stops ringing and the spotlight moves on. His warning was as much a reality check as it was a prediction. In an industry that thrives on fresh faces and flawless PR, one wrong move doesn't just tarnish your reputation, it can end your career entirely. Katt leaned forward, his voice dropping to a deliberate, razor-sharp cadence, the kind that makes you lean in even when you don't want to hear what's coming next. "This ain't a joke, this ain't about clicks," he said, eyes locked into the camera like he was speaking directly to Perry and Sharpe. "Y'all think you're untouchable, but Hollywood don't love you, it uses you. The minute you stop being profitable, you're disposable. And right now, you're both making the exact kind of mistakes they wait for." His words carried the weight of someone who's been there, who's seen careers vanish under the heat of scandal and arrogance. Katt accused Perry of building an empire on the backs of audiences who no longer feel represented in his work, warning that once the cultural tide shifts, no amount of money or influence will shield him. To Sharpe, he offered an even harsher truth. They love you loud, until they don't. They love you controversial, until they can't afford the risk. Then you're gone. It wasn't just a warning, it was a challenge, a dare to step back, re-evaluate, and recognize that fame is not the same as respect. Katt's tone made it clear that this wasn't gossip or petty drama. It was survival advice from someone who's navigated the minefield and lived to tell about it. The question hanging in the air was whether Perry and Sharpe would hear it in time, or if they'd ignore it, until it was far too late. The energy in the room shifted as Katt began pulling back the curtain, exposing the quiet whispers and behind, the scene's murmurs that had been circulating for years. He spoke about secret meetings in penthouse hotel suites, backroom deals that were never meant to see the light of day, and the unspoken agreements that kept certain people in power while others were quietly blacklisted. According to Katt, Tyler Perry's success story wasn't as clean as the press releases made it seem. There were sacrifices, compromises, and relationships severed for the sake of maintaining his empire's image. He claimed there were former collaborators who had been promised opportunities and projects, only to be pushed aside the moment they questioned the system or asked for fairness. As for Shannon Sharpe, Katt hinted at internal tensions with producers, executives, and even former teammates, suggesting that his fiery personality, while entertaining for audiences, had also made him enemies in high places. He painted a picture of a Hollywood machine that feeds on drama but punishes those who can't control it, a machine that will turn even its brightest stars into tabloid fodder when the narrative needs a twist. Katt's delivery wasn't wild or chaotic here. It was measured, almost surgical, as if he wanted every word to land with undeniable precision. He told stories of parties where cameras weren't allowed, where alliances were made and broken over a single conversation, and where Perry and Sharpe's own choices had allegedly set them on a dangerous path. The most chilling part was when Katt made it clear that these weren't just rumors. He had seen enough, heard enough, and experienced enough to know exactly how the industry moves when it decides to clean house. This wasn't just a warning, it was an indictment, a preemptive obituary for two careers that might not survive the next scandal. And the way Katt framed it, the storm wasn't coming, it was already here. Katt didn't waste any time easing into the next revelation. He went straight for the jugular. With the room hanging on every word, he shifted his tone from careful storytelling to raw, unapologetic truth-telling. He claimed that Tyler Perry's empire had been shielded for years not just by money and influence, but by a network of Hollywood gatekeepers who owed him favors or feared crossing him. According to Katt, those days of untouchable protection were coming to an end. He recounted how certain insiders, people who once stayed silent, were now leaking information to bloggers, podcasters, and underground gossip channels, creating a slow but steady bleed of damaging stories. Then, without missing a beat, Katt turned his attention to Shannon Sharpe, revealing that his recent media moves had backfired spectacularly. In Katt's words, Sharpe's confidence had tipped into arrogance, making him a target for executives who had been waiting for a reason to cut him loose. Katt alleged there were unflattering recordings, tense boardroom clashes, and private exchanges that would shatter the carefully crafted image Sharpe had built over the years. The kicker came when Katt hinted at a shared scandal, an incident involving both Perry and Sharpe that, if confirmed, would make headlines for weeks and permanently stain their reputations. He described it as the kind of story that no PR team in the world can spin, something that would ripple beyond Hollywood and into mainstream public discourse. But Katt didn't just stop at dropping hints. He delivered his message with a sense of inevitability, warning them that the truth doesn't disappear just because powerful people want it buried. He looked directly into the camera, as if addressing them personally, and said that when the walls close in, it won't matter how many millions you've made, how many connections you've secured, or how many people you've silenced, the truth will still find a way to surface. And when it does, the very machine that built you will be the one that tears you apart. That was the moment the audience realized this wasn't entertainment. It was a live dismantling of two public figures, one verbal sledgehammer at a time. The fallout from Katt's words was immediate and volcanic. Within minutes of the clip hitting social media, timelines across Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok turned into a war zone of hot takes, conspiracy threads, and jaw-dropping reaction videos. The hashtag with Perry's name alongside exposed began trending in multiple countries, while Shannon Sharpe's fanbase scrambled to defend him in comment sections that were already flooded with receipts, old interviews, leaked texts, and grainy screenshots that seemed to support Katt's claims. Entertainment blogs published back-to-back articles, each one trying to dig deeper than the last, citing unnamed industry veterans who whispered that Katt wasn't exaggerating. Some even claimed they'd known about certain incidents for years but had been too afraid to publish. Then came the podcast circuit, shows that thrived on drama, booking last-minute guests who had supposedly worked with Perry or crossed paths with Sharpe. Each guest seemed to add another brick to the wall of allegations, from hostile workplace environments to backroom deals that allegedly crossed ethical lines. Meanwhile, on TikTok, short-form storytellers pieced together timelines, complete with dramatic music, red arrows, and freeze frames of suspicious facial expressions during past interviews. Perry's PR team reportedly went into crisis mode, issuing vague denials and quietly pulling strings to suppress certain trending topics, but it was like trying to hold back a tidal wave with duct tape. Sharpe, on the other hand, seemed to vanish from his usual social media activity, fueling speculation that he'd been advised to lay low until the firestorm passed. But Katt wasn't done. He posted a cryptic follow-up video late that night, hinting that he still had one last piece to drop, something that would end the debate once and for all. That line alone was enough to send the internet into overdrive, with some fans speculating that he had video evidence, while others believed it might be a witness willing to go public. Either way, the damage had been done. Reputations were dented, brands were nervous, and for the first time in years, the untouchable image of Tyler Perry and Shannon Sharpe was showing deep, visible cracks. This wasn't just a momentary scandal. It felt like the opening act of a much bigger takedown. When Katt finally dropped the so-called last piece, the internet all but froze. It wasn't a typical rant, nor was it just another live stream full of vague insinuations. This time, Katt came armed with what he claimed was undeniable proof, unedited audio recordings and behind-the-scenes footage from private events that the public was never supposed to see. In the first clip, a voice that many recognized as Tyler Perry's could be heard discussing controlling narratives and keeping certain names quiet, with another unidentified voice laughing and agreeing that some people just don't deserve the spotlight. The second piece of evidence was even more damning. Grainy but clear enough to make out faces, it appeared to show Shannon Sharpe engaged in a heated exchange with a network executive, throwing around threats about pulling strings to silence critics. The footage was time-stamped from years ago, but the implications were nuclear, especially when paired with Katt's commentary, which dissected each moment with surgical precision. The internet responded like gasoline meeting fire. Within hours, the clips were mirrored across dozens of platforms despite takedown attempts. Reaction videos exploded, with creators breaking down body language, voice tone, and background details to validate the authenticity. Some legal analysts even joined the fray, pointing out that if real, these recordings could open the door to lawsuits, contract terminations, and major brand withdrawals. Perry's camp scrambled, releasing a statement calling the recordings fabricated, but the damage was spiraling out of control. Memes, parody skits, and even AI-generated reenactments flooded timelines, ensuring the story wouldn't fade anytime soon. Sharpe's silence continued, but that silence now screamed louder than any statement could. Then came the wild card, a surprise interview from a former insider who claimed they were present at one of the events and corroborated Katt's version of events in chilling detail. The whistleblower's face was blurred, voice altered, but their account matched the recordings too closely to dismiss as coincidence. By the end of the night, mainstream news outlets, who usually steered clear of messy celebrity feuds, were running the story in primetime segments, treating it less like gossip and more like a legitimate scandal with real-world consequences. And Katt, sitting back in his signature unbothered style, seemed almost amused by the chaos he'd unleashed. His closing remark in the video summed up the entire saga in one sentence: "When you build an empire on lies, don't be shocked when truth becomes your wrecking ball." The message was clear: this wasn't over, and the next wave could be even bigger.